Welcome to Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape Podcast. Hosted by Dr. Holly Krutka, Executive Director of the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. The show highlights SER's role supporting our mission to promote energy-driven economic development for the state of Wyoming.
Welcome back, listeners. Today we're going to be talking about work happening here at the School of Energy Resources and across the University of Wyoming, focused on Wyoming coal and finding new uses for Wyoming coal. And we're going to narrow down in a specific area. But for those who aren't familiar, Wyoming is the nation's largest coal producer, and we have really prolific coal reserves here in the state. If you've never seen the mines near Gillette, it's really incredible how thick the seams are, how efficiently it can be mined. And our Wyoming coal has some really great properties, low in sulfur and just really high quality coal. So we're excited to always look for new ways to use Wyoming's energy resources. And that's one of our roles here at the School of Energy Resources. So today we'll be focused on coal. And for our guest, we're really excited to have Eli. Eli, thank you so much for being on our podcast. You're a new graduate from the University of Wyoming. So can you, first of all, give your whole name and talk about your path first to come here to the University of Wyoming and what you studied while you were here?
Yeah, and thanks for having me on today, Holly. So my name is Eli Ellis. I'm a researcher at the Center of Carbon Capture and Conversion at the School of Energy Resources. I'm from Wyoming. I'm on path to attend the university. I looked around a little bit at some different colleges, but it's really hard to beat the Hathaway Scholarship. And so getting to come to a great university with your tuition basically paid for, it was a bit of a no-brainer. And then at the same time, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to major in when I first came. So that was kind of another factor, I guess, that played into it.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of folks when they're first coming to college. So Definitely. You're not alone. So when did you start doing research here at the University of Wyoming?
So I started just before COVID. I think it was the spring semester of 2020. And I started in Dr. Belmont's research lab. So a student came and talked to my thermodynamics class and kind of recruited some undergrads. You actually got class credit. So it counted as an elective. You had to do some weekly reports and kind of a final project sort of thing, but it was really fun and really hands-on, and that's really how I got started working
so
in the lab.
What year were you?
I was a junior at this time. Well, technically a junior. It did take me 5 years to graduate.
Same boat. Junior for engineers. So,
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So later in your undergrad degree, you decided to do undergraduate research, Dr. Belmont, and so you're in mechanical engineering.
Yes.
She was the department head of mechanical engineering. I had a really similar path, actually, to start doing undergraduate research, so not too different. So then you did research as an undergrad, and why did you decide to continue your education and get a master's? Yeah,
so I loved the experience of working in the lab and getting to work in Dr. Belmont's lab and all the exciting kind of similar things to what I'm doing now. So it was kind of a great precursor. And then I also had an internship with Idaho National Lab. And everyone there had an advanced degree, and I figured if I wanted to work in research and development, which I was really interested in, I figured I should get an advanced degree and decided to get my master's.
Were you interested in research before you did that undergraduate research, or was it like on your radar?
Not really. I mean, they talked about the things that they did in the lab and kind of the different experiences and the hands-on applications, and that's really what I was interested in. So I thought I'd, give it a shot with that class and kind of earn that elective credit first just to start out. And then, just really enjoyed the work and getting really to apply all the knowledge from the classes and everything like that.
Did it make it seem more real?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Getting to take concepts from class and actually getting to use them was really cool.
So it sounds like you would probably recommend that to current students.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, me too. It definitely changed my entire career trajectory, starting doing undergraduate research. I don't think I would have continued beyond undergrad had I not done it.
No, me either. And you're busy taking classes and everything. It's hard to find the route that you want to go. And so that would be my advice to students, is just kind of check out everything and really find what you're interested in before you start narrowing down that singular path.
Yeah. But you're not on a singular path.
No, yeah, I shouldn't have said that.
I will just say, my career has taken so many twists and turns.
Yep.
Yeah, it's have fun with it and do things that you enjoy.
Yep.
So why then did you decide to come here to SER? So now you're a research professional, you've graduated, and you're an employee of the School of Energy Resources. Talk about that decision, how that happened.
Yeah, so my master's work was actually funded by SER, so I really got a trial period of about a year of getting to work with everyone at the Center of Carbon Capture and Conversion. And so it was really cool getting to kind of meet everybody and work, I guess, part-time. And I really just enjoyed the work environment. Everyone that works there, everyone was very supportive. And then really what made me decide working here was SER, I think, is really the forefront of energy innovation, not only in the state, but in the nation, I guess. And what I'm doing now really is just a continuation of my master's work. And so I thought it really fit well. I enjoyed the work environment. And so it was a bit of a no-brainer. If I wanted to stay in Wyoming and continue doing research and development, I thought this was a great opportunity.
And thanks for saying that. That's definitely one of our goals, is to keep folks like you, give you opportunities in the state to stay here and work on Wyoming and helping its energy sector. So let's talk about specifically what you're doing. So you're right now working, and you have been, on a research project focused on pyrolysis of Wyoming coal. So let's just start with the basics. What does that term mean, pyrolysis?
So pyrolysis is basically just the heating of an organic material in the absence of oxygen. So different from combustion, where you have the fuels actually combusting and releasing heat, pyrolysis actually takes heat, and you don't have any oxygen.
Is there no oxygen?
So you can have limited amounts. Some people use, or some processes use steam, but for our process, it's in an inert environment.
Okay.
So an inert gas that we're reacting in.
Inert means no oxygen.
No oxygen. Yep.
Got
no
it.
reacting environment.
No flames. No oxygen. So it's not burning. So pyrolysis is kind of like a treatment.
Yeah, it's basically just a heat treatment of the coal, breaks it down into some different components.
And we're focused on coal, but you can do pyrolysis, like you said, to any kind of organic material. You can do it to biomass to make biochar and other things.
Exactly.
We're focused
biomass
on coal.
For bio-oil and biochar. You can also use it for plastics, and then naphtha cracking, so breaking up naphtha into some lighter molecules.
Mm-hmm. So what specifically are you focused on right now in terms of pyrolysis research?
Yeah, so we have a small lab unit here on campus. I mean, I say it's small scale.
Is it small?
It takes up a whole room. And I can run through about 1 kilogram of coal every day. So not quite like a benchtop scale. It takes up a whole room. But what we're doing now is really optimizing the process, collecting data for a larger unit that we're designing. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're trying to find the bottlenecks, kind of where stuff not will go wrong, but kind of what we need to focus in on and make sure we have those components really figured out before we start designing that larger unit. And then at the same time, I'm also making products for other groups to research and see what all different things we can make out of these coal pyrolysis products.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's talk about exactly why we're doing it. Obviously, we want to help Wyoming coal, but what this research program is focused on is you are focused on this, what we might call upstream process called pyrolysis. Yep. It treats the coal, and then you're not necessarily generating products, you're generating a feedstock.
Yes, exactly.
And that feedstock, then what happens to that?
Yeah, so I guess not only is it a feedstock for other downstream groups, we do use, so the soil amendment group actually does use it directly. We're also looking at using the tar kind of directly. We might have to pre-treat that a little bit. But yeah, just like you were saying, it's the products that we make are actually feedstocks for other processes, other uses. And so I'm supplying different groups on campus with all those different products so that they can figure out what all they can make, what makes the most sense for the products that we make.
So yeah, let's talk about a little bit more. So what comes out of this pyrolysis process?
Yeah, so you have your solid, which is the char, similar to like a charcoal or an activated carbon. And then you have liquid products. So you have some oils and tars, and then you have your gas products. So a lot of that is methane, propane, kind of those kind of gas hydrocarbons. You do get a little bit of CO2, a little bit of carbon monoxide, but since we don't add oxygen into the process, it's really only the oxygen that's available in the coal that wants to go down that pathway.
Fun fact, there is actually oxygen in coal.
Yep.
And so you can get carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide even if there is no oxygen in your process. Very cool. And so one of the things, the feedstocks or what's coming out of the pyrolysis process that we're really focused on is that char. We're looking at everything, and I think our goal is to use everything that comes out, right? Yeah. Yep. But the char is the principal component.
Yep. And it's really the main product that comes out. So we get 50 to 60% of the coal that we put in comes out as that solid product. So we want to make sure that if we're making all this char, that we have these different avenues to make different products for it.
And then you're supplying that to other researchers here at the University of Wyoming in a few different departments. So you talked about the soil amendment, and that really takes the char and integrates it into soil. And we're working with folks over in the College of Ag, Life Sciences, and Natural Resources. And I think we have some field plots. We also have some ongoing tests with mining companies working on reclamation. And then we have construction materials.
Yep.
What else?
A lot of products go to the civil engineering department that they're researching. We're also supplying product to Dr. Brandt's group that I know you had on recently. So looking at...
He's looking at membranes.
Yep.
He's making membranes that can treat water.
Yep. Which is very cool.
Very cool.
Yep. And then, so that's kind of the solid product, or kind of going down those avenues.
So one of the cool things that I've always thought makes research really fun is that you don't always know where you're going to end up. You're going to have surprises. That's the whole point of doing research, is that you don't know the outcomes. You might have theories, but you don't know for sure, and that's why you do it. In some ways, that's why we do what we do here at the School of Energy Resources, and why we have all these research projects happening. So in your undergraduate work or here at SER, have you had any surprises during your research process?
Yeah. And just like you said, that's really why I love my job, is kind of all the different avenues that it takes you down. But what I really take away is the more surprises that I find in the lab is going to make it a lot easier than once we build that larger unit. So really, that's what my work is focused on, is finding those surprises, make sure we have every variable accounted for so that we don't have to face those later. But really, the problems that I face, are not problems, but challenges, is really how tight a windows we have to have for operating conditions, different components and how they work. Something slightly malfunctions and we get a bit of a different product. And so we really want to find these little windows that give us the best products possible.
Yeah. And you've mentioned it's questionable whether you have a small process or a large process. I would argue for a university, it's large, but we're building a much larger unit now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to call what you're working on right now large.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, bench scale maybe, or pilot scale is sometimes what we call it. You know, one of the interesting things is, because you said we have to add heat during pyrolysis, you have to think about that as you scale it up, right?
Exactly.
So you're having to tightly control conditions. And then as we scale up, we have to make sure we have really good controls, because you're going to have to tightly control that at a larger scale.
Yep.
And
that's really one of the surprises that we found, is that maybe our mode of heating in our pilot scale that I operate is not going to work when you're doing tons of coal every day. And so we've had to change that a little bit, but making sure that we have everything accounted for and trying to mimic these larger commercial units in a small lab and making sure that they reflect each other so that we can actually figure out everything that we need to.
So what are you general temperature ranges? Are you allowed to share?
Yeah, so it's 800 to about 1100 C. So what is that?
C is 15? Celsius.
Yep, Celsius, sorry. I'm a bit of a nerd. I always work in C. And
we do too.
Yeah.
Got to do it.
But about 1500 Fahrenheit to about 2000 Fahrenheit is kind of what we're studying.
Wow. And so how are you keeping that temperature in the lab?
So we get to that temperature with an electric furnace. And then for, upscaling and larger units, you have to provide that heat with... Well, you could do with an electric furnace, but also with combustion of natural gas and stuff like that. So
you've already mentioned this a couple times. There's what we're calling a demonstration plant. It's not here in Laramie or at the UW, on any UW campus. Actually, construction's underway near Gillette at the Wyoming Innovation Center. So first, let's start with what's your role on that project, and what experiences are helping you kind of broaden your industrial knowledge? Like, what are you learning as you build this first of a kind facility here at Gillette?
Yeah. So my role is really helping in the design of the unit itself, gathering data for different components, doing tests in my kind of smaller unit to figure out those bottlenecks and things that I talked about earlier, and really trying to find those surprises that we talked about in the lab unit. And so what I'm trying to do, or what my role is to look at kind of the cause and effect of everything and really have everything honed in before we start dumping in hundreds of pounds of coal every hour. Mm-hmm. And I'll also be helping in the startup and kind of operating the unit in the next couple of years. As far as experiences, I feel like I'm getting to be a part of all the different phases of a new process that I wouldn't get anywhere else as a young engineer. So I get to partake in all of the design meetings, PHA and HAZOP, so process hazard assessments. And operating that smaller unit, we really get to see where possible issues could come up and make sure that we have all the safety procedures necessary to make sure that this thing functions smoothly. But yeah, I don't really think there'd be another spot somewhere else where I would get to partake in all these different phases as a young engineer. So I get to work with a variety of different people, from engineers to operators at the plant itself, and then different vendors, and then all the clients that we're looking at for all the different products.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be doing a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
You could do it all. And I think, well, also you'll get pulled into economics. It's always really important when you start to get the amount of information and data that you need to start really drilling down on those economics, right?
Yep.
At the end of the day, that we have to make sure that whatever we develop here can compete. And so one of the goals of the demonstration scale pyrolysis unit is to collect the information that we need. Right.
Yeah. And so, with the small scale unit, we can see kind of the different products that we can make and possible revenue that we can get from those. But we really don't have a good idea of how much it's going to cost to operate at a larger scale, as well as really build the facility itself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're doing our best with what we have, but I think that's a really good point, that what happens here is the science and the foundation, but then what's going to happen in the field and at the Wyoming Innovation Center with that demonstration, that's what's kind of helping us make this transition toward making this a more commercial process. If we wanted to sell this technology, or I should say license it, we might not have all the information we need yet for a commercial entity to understand, what is this going to be worth? But the demonstration facility, that is one of our big goals. I think the other one is to be able to create enough of the feedstock material, the char, and the other materials coming out to test the products at a larger scale.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Holly, because I struggle with balancing taking data from our unit as well as supplying for all these different downstream groups. But yeah, that's really the goal of the demonstration plan, is just taking stepping stones. You can't just go from something that's taking grams every hour to several hundred pounds every hour.
Right.
So we gotta slowly kind of scale it up.
I'm curious, you already said, so you're working with faculty across the University of Wyoming and researchers who are making all different products from the feedstocks you're creating. And in some case, like the soil mimic, they're just using it as is. Is there ever any difference in the properties? Like, is one faculty member who's making bricks or fascia want different properties in the char versus the people using the soil mimic? Like, is there...
Yes, definitely. So we have a couple of different operating conditions, as well as not a different process itself, but we take some different steps to pre-treat the coal before we actually run it through our flash pyrolysis system. Because different groups need different properties, and just changing those operating conditions a little bit really does change the properties of the products themselves.
But you can do it all with the same unit.
I can do it all with the same unit.
Okay. Yep. And you said a new term, flash pyrolysis.
Yes.
Okay. So we have already been told what pyrolysis is. What does flash pyrolysis mean?
So pyrolysis can be broken up in a few different ways. So there's slow pyrolysis, which is generally at lower temperatures and the reactions are on the order of minutes to hours. Flash pyrolysis is very high temperatures and very fast reaction time, so on the order of seconds. And what's really cool about the flash pyrolysis is that usually with slow pyrolysis, you put it in a big container because it takes hours, right, to heat treat. So it's more of like a batch system, whereas with the flash pyrolysis, it's really a continuous system. So things are reacting super fast and it's just continually fed through our reactor.
That's a good point. I think flash pyrolysis or something that's reacting faster will fundamentally fit with our program more since we're focused on high volumes.
Yep.
Like what can we use Wyoming coal for new industries that is really large in scale.
Yep.
And if you're talking about big containers reacting for hours, that's going to be difficult to accomplish at large scale.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really what we're trying to accomplish with that continuous system is using as much coal as we can, but at the same time creating these high value products.
So what do you think could be a best case scenario for the pyrolysis work in general?
That the process is commercialized. So mines continue operating. We start operating this process at a commercial scale. So Wyoming continues to profit from the mineral tax. Kind of a new industry is formed, a coal refinery, bringing in jobs to Wyoming, and then definitely more affordable, high quality products because coal isn't the most expensive fuel source. So if we can make these high quality products from coal, we can definitely beat out the competition and sell them for less expensive.
Why? Yeah, Wyoming coal is definitely not the most expensive fuel source. It's so inexpensive. In fact, Wyoming, the vast majority of the coal we mine is shipped to other states where it's consumed. When those power plants across the nation accept that, the vast majority of the price they actually pay is for the transportation.
Yep.
So if we can use it here in Wyoming and then ship more expensive products where that transportation cost might be the same, but it's going to be a lower fraction of the actual cost of the product.
Yeah, and the coal itself has 30% moisture. So
that's a good point.
You're shipping out almost half water.
Good point.
So if we can keep everything kind of localized and then, bring in this new industry and more jobs to Wyoming and then ship out those high quality products, reducing the transportation costs and everything like that you mentioned.
Yeah. So what do you think the biggest challenges are?
Personally is balancing between collecting data and trying to get information for that upscaled unit while at the same time providing product to these groups on campus. So it'll be nice once that thing's operational and we'll be producing several hundred pounds of products every day instead of me doing my best to make just a jar full every day. So that's kind of, on a personal level, I would say that's kind of my biggest challenge.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And then, in terms of the process itself is definitely upscaling. So going from that small lab scale to the larger demonstration plant.
Are we calling it small lab scale?
No, I don't know.
Compared to what we're building.
Compared to what we're building, it's small. It's small.
Yeah.
Compared to other lab processes, it's definitely large.
Big.
Yeah. I do keep saying that.
Well, I think that's kind of SCR though, is that since we're focused on large scale commercialization, not just for the kind of coal refinery or coal to products work, but for everything, we end up having different scales here.
Yeah. It's interesting working in a research environment and at the same time going into that industrial and commercial scale. So it's hard to put a size on things, I guess, when I see the equipment that's going up in Gillette and then comparing it to what I operate.
But it's fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So will you continue operating whatever we're calling it now, the bench pilot that's here on campus? Will that continue after the demonstration is built? Will you continue to collect data?
Yeah.
And optimize?
So it's a lot easier to change conditions in there than it would be to change anything at the demonstration plant. So any issues that could possibly come up or anything that we might face, it's easier to try and mimic that in the pilot scale plant that I operate rather than in the Gillette unit.
Now that's a good point. And I think this will be interesting because we, in our engineering undergraduate degrees, you definitely talk about startup and shutdown, but most of your work really is focused on kind of, what we will call steady state or normal operations. But when you're building a first of a kind facility and you're starting it up for the first time,
yeah.
It's not going to be steady state, right?
No,
We're going to have challenges. We know that. That's the whole point of developing something new.
Yeah, exactly.
So that'll be fun to work through and a new experience.
Yep. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible so that startup isn't quite as tedious and time consuming. So that's really why I'm spending so much time in the lab right now. Because you're right, the startup and shutdown are definitely the parts that we don't really have accounted for with our lab unit.
Yeah. And one of the things, I guess, longer term, first of all, we just want to make sure it works, get the information needed to do the economics. But, we can use this demonstration facility to like even kind of start to begin to come up with operating procedures and best practices for startup and shutdown and operation and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that'll be another thing that I think having all those experiences this early in your career for a process that you helped develop sounds kind of cool.
Yeah. Getting to be a part of every step in that kind of scale up has been really, I feel like that's something that you don't get to see everywhere else. So that's really what I take away from this.
And I haven't said it yet, so I just want to thank the Wyoming legislature and the executive branch for supporting this work. This is an entire research area that we have not been able to secure competitive funds for. The Department of Energy at the federal level is not funding new uses for coal at this scale, but it is clearly something that is in Wyoming's interest. We have this incredible resource here with Wyoming coal. And so thank you so much to the state for supporting all this and helping us have the resources we need to hire people like you, Eli.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
So, having been here a student at the University of Wyoming, what would you say to a current student or someone thinking about coming here about pursuing a career in energy?
Yes. So I just feel like the University of Wyoming has a ton of opportunities, and that you just kind of have to put yourself out there and kind of take the initiative to kind of look at all the different paths that you can take. I mean, just at SER, we have conferences, the Distinguished Speaker Series, seminars, so you can learn about all these different industries. And then we have a wide variety of professors that have always been very helpful to me as long as you reach out and help guide you and offer advice and kind of maybe what path you might want to take. But yeah, all across the university, there's people working in the energy industry. And so it's really, I'm trying to say it's
the best.
It's a really rare place to be for the energy industry.
I think the other thing is, okay, so UW, in particular for energy, but probably more broadly, has a great undergraduate research, which is how you found your way to this. So that's a great area. We have a lot of experiential learning opportunities. So like SER, we have a field course in the summers where you can go see real energy sites that students really love that. And you mentioned like the conferences and everything else. I think one thing, we're really close to industry here. And because the University of Wyoming is the only four-year research institution in the state, we get to have those partnerships closer than often other universities might have. Yeah,
and it's scary for a student, I guess, to attend some of these conferences that we might hold, but I feel like it's really,
scary.
I was a little bit scared, but
Why?
I feel like, I don't know. Being in a classroom all the time and then all of a sudden getting to meet these people that are actually applying all this different stuff, but really just putting yourself out there and introducing yourself and getting to learn really about what they do and if you're possibly interested in that kind of thing.
Okay. The people at the conferences are just like you, except older and have been in the workforce longer. It's not scary.
No.
Okay. If any students, please come to the conferences. They're not scary, right, Eli?
Yes, I shouldn't have said scary.
No, it's fine. Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think the opportunities are kind of limitless, honestly. If you have a really good idea that will help Wyoming energy, I'll just say here at SER, we'll try to help you make it happen. So we always end our podcast with kind of a question not focused on energy, but asking our guests to tell us about their favorite place or something you love about Wyoming. So let's do, what is your favorite place in Wyoming to go to?
Yeah, and I knew this question was coming, and it's still the hardest question of the day. I try and visit a different part of Wyoming every summer, and just to find a new place to kind of see, but the Snowies are definitely a second home. Yeah. And it's right outside of Laramie, but my family's got a cabin up there, and so snowmobiling and snowboarding and everything in the wintertime, and just I like the wintertime because there's nobody up there, and so you feel like you're kind of alone in the mountains, which is really cool, and so I'd have to go with that.
Great answer. And they're looking a little more snowy today, aren't they?
They are. It's getting a little chilly out there.
So, Eli, thank you so much for all you've done, for choosing us here at the School of Energy Resources, being willing to work here, and for your dedication to the work we're doing, and for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Holly. Glad to be here.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Energy Frontier, the Wyoming Landscape, the podcast that highlights the School of Energy Resources at the University of Wyoming. You can expect a new episode of Energy Frontier every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time.